Naruto, the anime about... I've done this introduction already. Okay, so this one is a little bit harder to make a whole series background on, since I already did that. So instead, I'll be explaining why I'm even reviewing this game in the first place. I made a deal with a friend of mine, Avataryaya, where he would play Dangnaronpa trigger Happy Havoc, and I would finish watching part 1 of Naruto. But since I felt that the amount wasn't the most equivalent, since at that point I only had the Sasuke retrieval arc left, I decided to sweeten the deal and do a review for a Naruto game that he chose out of the options I gave him. The choices being Clash of Ninja 2, Storm 1, and Uzumaki Chronicles. Gee, I wonder which one he chose. He's also going to document his experience with Dangnaronpa 1 and is uploading that to his channel, or has already uploaded it. Who knows? It mainly depends on whenever you watch this. To finish off my side of the deal, today I'll be looking at Naruto Uzumaki Chronicles and see why he chose that game for me to review. The Hidden Leaf Village and the towns around it have had several events occurring in them, and Orochimaru is carrying out some kind of plan. The village tries to deal with the situation by putting Genin, who normally only gets C rank or lower missions, on higher ranked missions, since the military strength recently has been much lower. During some missions, Naruto and others are attacked by Sound Ninja, and discover left behind contraptions and prisms used for experiments that are performed on abducted villagers and prisoners. These experiments utilizes a green mist that turns people into monsters. The mist is a mold spore that saps all life from a human and revives those affected to be under the control of the spore, and as long as there is green mist or a prism nearby, they will be revived indefinitely. Orochimaru claims this to be a new jutsu that he would use to create an undead army that can always come back from death, and the Hidden Leaf must stop him. One thing I will give this game's story is that it's actually pretty dark, which does fit the tone of Naruto. I like me some dark stories, what can I say? The spore experiments are outright torture, brainwashing, and manipulation of death, and you even see a prisoner afraid of getting captured and one transform right in front of you. And this stuff can actually be kinda interesting. That's where my kinda stops though. Other than that, this story sucks! Something that is important to mention is that there are a ton of differences between the English and Japanese versions of this game. For instance, Tsunade, Itachi, Kisame, and Ninetales aren't in the game, some boss fights are completely different, some missions are removed. The English version takes place after the Konoha Crush arc instead of after what I'm assuming is the Search of Tsunade arc. So, a lot of differences that I'm assuming were made due to spoilers, even though they kept Choji's partial expansion jutsu, which isn't shown until the Sasuke retrieval arc, but let's ignore that little tidbit for now. Because of this, I'm focusing on the English version, since that's the one I played. These differences made a lot of events and plotlines kind of irrelevant in the grand scheme. All of the main story that I explained earlier takes place at the first 10 minutes, and the last 2 to 3-ish hours of the game. I haven't mentioned yet that the game is 8 hours. The stuff that is story relevant in the 5 to 6 hour gap is Naruto and Sasuke's rivalry, which are a bunch of fights that amounts to basically nothing. It feels like Naruto and Sasuke fight just because it's Naruto and Sasuke and they have to fight. Then there's Gaara being a villain, which doesn't make any kind of sense, especially because the game doesn't give any kind of motive for him to be causing trouble in the Sand Village and working for Orochimaru. He's a bodyguard, but his reasoning isn't explained. May I remind you, this is after the Chunin exams, where he has a turn, so that murder-driven motive does not work here. This is like 2 hours at most, and I'm probably being generous with that. The other 3 to 4 hours that aren't story related is boring world building, which only applies to this game at best, and some of the dumbest wastes of time I've ever had at worst. It's nothing but filler. A bunch of missions end up being similar stuff like Naruto pulls cart, Naruto gets ambushed by generic criminals, Naruto and enemies taunt each other, Naruto beats enemies and taunts them again. Rinse and repeat until you get to your destination. Mission complete, and there's probably some other dumb plotline that's dropped the second it's picked up.
Confidence in me has hit rock bottom. I feel better now.
Every one of these missions felt like this meme right here. It was all so boring. And this is probably the biggest sin of all. Despite Orochimaru being the main villain, you don't see or hear him once until the last 15 minutes of the game. And I'm not exaggerating in the slightest. And don't give me the excuse of, Orochimaru mainly affects things from the sidelines. You see his impact on the areas, which isn't even entirely true for the source material, but again, let's just ignore that. You know what else he's done? He's had conversations with those he's working with. Have him talk to Kabuto about Sasuke since he has the curse mark and expand Sasuke more, or have him talk about Gaara and why he's working with them. Just anything. Long rambling short, the story's garbage. We're moving on. This game's art style is not exactly the greatest. There's flashes of good and bad pretty much all over the place. Character models actually look really good and colorful, which makes them stand out amongst some mostly generic and kind of bland environments. Animation and actual combat is good, but it looks stiff in cutscenes. The CG cutscenes look pretty good. Naruto's hair is weird to me, but I'm used to his hair just being a singular object, but that's nitpicking. Lip syncing in regular cutscenes is basically non-existent.
I can't just let you all leave. You've seen too much.
Just bring it on already!
Also, Rasengan is called Power Strike in this game. What a generic name. Just call it the Rasengan. For every good thing I see, I can find something else that I don't like. And one thing I really don't like is how cutscene skipping works. Because you can't just instantly skip a cutscene. You have to mash through each line of dialogue, and any camera movements have to be completed before the next line of dialogue can come out. Which can lead to what feels like really long pauses between dialogue.
You know how it... This act...
See what I mean? Granted, it's better than not being able to skip cutscenes at all, but not by much. Something I don't talk about too often is loading screens, but this is an exception because there are two different types of loading screens. Loading screens that go into villages or cutscenes have a minigame where you rotate the control sticks. Doing it fast enough gives you back a bit of chakra, which I'll explain later. It reminds me of some of the Dragon Ball games where you just kinda have to mash or whatever to get something to happen on screen. Though this doesn't feel as special, even though it actually contributes to gameplay. Loading screens that lead into battles cut the screen into pieces and scatter them in 3 different ways, giving more of an impact towards entering a fight. Not sure if they actually have a meaning for what kind of fight you'll get into, but the differences in entering a battle is appreciated given how often you'll be going into them. Every character has the same voice actor. What a shocker. Look, I don't mean to be mean, but I'm pretty sure every anime game has the same voice actors as their original source, so it's usually not interesting to point out the voice actors. What is interesting though is Karin, since she's a new character. She is voiced by Karen Strassman, who currently voices Rouge the Bat, Aegis, and Nanako. Now she's in far more stuff than that, but that's the most recognizable stuff for me. Also, I could very clearly hear Nanako after finding that out, and I low-key hate it.
When a shop does good business, it makes some people jealous.
Moving on, I'm gonna be frank, the music is the best part of this game's presentation. It definitely has a Naruto vibe with a lot of rock and a bit of techno songs as well. There are some absolute bangers in this game, and listening to the music from playing the game doesn't give it enough justice. Listen to the soundtrack independently from the game, and there is a lot of stuff that you've more than likely missed. It's all around very nice to the ear. In order to progress through the game, you must accept missions from the Hokage's office. These missions have ranks from D to S. The higher the rank, the more difficult it will be. While traveling, you'll have battles where Naruto can combine weak and strong attacks as well as Shadow Clone Jutsu and Rasengan for close range combat. In order to use jutsus, he must first build up chakra by using stamina. The more stamina that is used, the stronger the jutsu will become. Naruto does have one more jutsu. I will not be naming this one. Regardless, it knocks back all enemies around him and stuns weak enemies. It doesn't require any chakra, but it does use a large amount of stamina. There is one extra use for stamina. When you get hit, you can activate Substitution Jutsu. You'll still take damage, but it also counters the enemy that hit you. For long range, you can switch between and use throwables which can stun enemies or deal various amounts of damage. There are also recovery items that refill your health and stamina. Any form of item that is dropped can also be exchanged for other items in a shop. Naruto still has one more ability up his sleeve, the power of the Nine Tails. At first the Nine Tail gauge will be sealed, but by doing enough combos it will become unsealed. While it is unsealed, if you have low enough health, you can activate the Nine Tails Fox's chakra, which gives Naruto stronger attack power, higher speed, lots of shadow clones, and unlimited stamina for jutsus. During some missions, Naruto can choose up to 2 allies. Though you can only have one out at a time during combat, you can switch between them and use their powers until their stamina runs out. Enemies that are defeated drop chakra, items, and virtue. Virtue is used to buy health/chakra upgrades and skill chips. The skill chips you buy can be placed in skill plates, causing boosts to your stats, accessibility to new moves, and more. For every mission complete, you are given a reward, which could be virtue, skill chips, and or skill plates. The amount of creativity for combos is actually pretty cool. Combining regular attacks into Shadow Clones, Rasengan, and projectiles can make for some interesting and high damaging combos. I do wish that it was more possible to implement your teammates better in the combos, since they only have one kind of combo for some reason, but they are able to be great allies in battle. Since they work through stamina and not health, they're usually able to provide large bursts of damage that Naruto himself normally can't achieve without particular circumstances. I will admit the amount of damage is probably a smidge too much, considering once I killed Kabuto at 2 health bars with a single lightning blade, but other than that, allies are nice. The amount of party members that you can use is cool too. You even get to play as Kakashi, which I can imagine is something that is cool for anyone that is a Naruto fan. I do wish Kiba and Lee were playable too, but that's being a little bit wishful. The chips and plates that you get throughout the game actually do matter a lot. The chips provide a lot of powerful techniques and stat bonuses, increasing your potential for better combos. Each plate is shaped incredibly differently from each other, making it easier or harder to play certain chips, depending on which one you use, which could lead to you having to sacrifice stats or abilities if you aren't able to manage the chips properly. Getting the board completely filled also has its own benefit, giving an additional boost depending on what chips you have the most of in that board, encouraging you to get the board filled. Like I said before, combos are cool to pull off, but it feels pretty rare for you to be able to do them, because about 10% of the time, you'd be able to do a cool combo. 60% of the remainder usually ends up having too many enemies around you, which leads to easy interruptions of even basic 3-hit combos, and the other 30% is on boss fights, which is the best to do these on since they have a lot of health and won't die instantly halfway through your combo. However, the big problem with bosses is that some of them have moves that they can use instantly pretty much whenever they want to, where if you have slightly over 60 hit points, you'll just die. And considering the base health is 100 hit points, it's a bit unfair to die to a move you can't react to. But oh, just use an item. On a first playthrough, I don't know what moves they have until they've already hit me with them, especially when I can't react to them. I don't know that the thing's going to kill me at that point, so that's not an excuse. This leads to just using the Nine Tails power to obliterate bosses from half of their health onwards and not use it anywhere else since you have to build up to it. Most missions feel like filler because, well, they are. They're already filler to the story. Why not have them be filler to gameplay? They're complete filler because you don't have to succeed at them. You can completely and utterly fail most missions and still continue unless they have a boss fight in them. They do give rewards if you complete them, however if you fail, you can't retry them, but you still continue on. This sounds like an optional quest, but it takes up all of your time for the main missions that actually progress plot, and you still at the very least have to attempt the optional quest in order to continue the game. At that point, just make the optional ones not have to even be attempted, instead of padding out the game with pointless missions that you have to participate in bare minimum to progress. It just feels like a waste of time for me to attempt them only to fail with no ability to retry them later. Some of the missions are stupidly difficult as well, so I'm just glad there isn't a ranking system of some kind because that would add even more frustration on top of this. Also, this game is not a platformer. Please don't put platforming segments in a game that's not meant for it. I was barely able to do platforming with the air dash, and that's an optional ability. I know there's a second game, so don't ever do this again. There really should be shortcuts on D-pad for items. It would help keep from interrupting game flow when switching between throwables or using healing items so much. Instead, you have to go into the pause menu, which has no music in it, mind you, and manually switch throwables or heal yourself, then continue the fight where it could be more streamlined and constant. And what else would you use the D-pad for? Movement? This could have been a very nice addition to keep the pace more in battle. Look, the combo potential is great and all, but when most of the game either doesn't allow it, or the game just flat out doesn't matter both story-wise and gameplay-wise, it becomes a lot harder to care about the game as a whole. And again, the Japanese version has a lot more things in its story, which probably makes that version better in that department, but I'm assuming a lot of gameplay elements are still similar, so even that version doesn't get too much of a pass. You have to do so much, very often, for far and few rewarding feelings. This game also manages to be a long, boring, and frustrating experience. I think I've said before that I'd rather have a game that angers me over a game that bores me, but being able to bore and frustrate me is honestly an achievement. At the very least, I can say that this game has given me a new experience, a new feeling. I don't like the feeling very much, but it's a new one. What's going on, my fellow residents? It's me, TheFrozenCavern, and thank you guys for making it to the end of this video. And Avataryaya, I know you're watching this because this was part of our deal. You better promote this video as if it was your own, because this game sucks and you on purposely chose the game that sucked. I gave you Dangnaronpa and you gave me this. At the very least, I'm done with part 1 of Naruto now. But if you don't promote this video, I'm going to hurt you. But anyways, now that I'm done with part 1 of Naruto, at some point I'm going to start watching Shippuden. I don't know when I'm going to get to a Shippuden game, but at some point I will, I'd suppose. Again, no idea when, but I still could. But also, speaking of Avataryaya, make sure you guys go to his channel. I'll be leaving it in the description below. He does a lot of fighting game content with a good amount of anime tied to it. And that Dangnaronpa video will be up at some point, and I myself will be excited to see the video too. And who knows, he might play more Dangnaronpa games in the future, probably through more deals side with him, but my part of the deal is done. But anyways, if you have not already, make sure you go down into the description below because that's where all of my social medias are located. My Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and Discord are all in the description, and they are all ways for you guys to be updated on any videos that I'm making or any updates for the channel. And if you enjoyed this video, don't forget to like and subscribe for more, as well as share this video out with your friends and family. But until the next video, take care.